Welcome to Haunted Talks, the official podcast of the Haunted Walk, offering ghost tours and paranormal adventures in Kingston, Ottawa, and Toronto, Ontario, and online experiences to anyone in this mortal realm. My name is Jim Dean. I am the creative director, and we thank you for joining us for this episode. Every now and then, a great ghost story will capture the imagination of the internet and go viral. That was the case last month when it was revealed that a cluster of rental homes near Manchester, England, require new tenants to sign a waiver acknowledging that they are moving into a haunted house. To discuss this strange situation and the odd and terrifying encounters from these homes, we will be joined by Paige Oldfield, a reporter from the Manchester Evening News who broke the story. But before we get to that, it is a fun time of year for us at the Haunted Walk. We've already resumed some of our tours in Kingston, Ottawa, and Toronto, and over the next few weeks, as the weather continues to improve, more and more will be returning. I am thrilled to announce that our ghost tours at Fort Henry National Historic Site in Kingston, Ontario are back as of this weekend. If you have never joined us at Fort Henry, you need to put it on your spooky places to go list. It really has everything. A heritage structure with a dark and dangerous past, creepy tunnels and old fortifications, and of course, some really chilling ghost stories. Information on our ghost tours at Fort Henry, as well as any of our paranormal adventures in Kingston, Ottawa, or Toronto, can be found on our website, hauntedwalk.com. There, you can also find info on our virtual experiences that can be enjoyed from anywhere in the world, including our virtual haunted campfires and the haunting at home. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter, all at Haunted Walk, for the latest news and updates. 2 easy and helpful ways you can let us know you are out there and enjoying the show is to leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen, and to recommend Haunted Talks to friends, family, random strangers on the internet, or anyone you think would enjoy it.
I joined the Manchester Evening News in February 2020, right before the pandemic, literally like 2 weeks before.
This is Paige Oldfield, who in March of 2022 wrote the article, "The Greater Manchester Street So Haunted You Had to Sign a Waiver to Move There."
I do anything and everything. Literally any story I'll cover, breaking news, features, courts, anything really, but I do take a particular interest in human interest stories. I wasn't assigned this story. I actually spotted it on one of those like Facebook community pages. There's a local one in the West Horton area of Bolton that I like on Facebook just to source stories really, because a lot of people talk in there, so it's a good way to find stories. And there was just a random post of a picture of the street from the 70s. It was an old black and white picture. And the caption was, "Does anyone remember the Poltergeist Street?" And I thought, I've never seen a post like this before. And I was reading through the comments and so many people were kind of like tagging their friends, saying, "Oh, I remember this street." And people kind of sharing their experiences. And I just thought, this is really interesting because you don't really see things like that very often. Originally, my idea for the story was to kind of go down there and speak to people on what it's like to live in, quote, the most haunted street in Greater Manchester. But it kind of just evolved because I managed to speak to someone who lived there when it was all going on when the activity was really rife in the 90s. So it just ended up being a real rabbit hole into this absolutely bizarre case. In England, a lot of the houses are terrace houses, which is kind of like rows of houses that are attached to each other. The walls are super thin. I know that because my house is exactly the same. And Wingates Grove is like that. And I think it used to be a former, or well, it may still be, council estate. So it's kind of like social housing with the council. And all the houses look the same. And it's just kind of like an unassuming street just on the outskirts of Bolton, which is a town in Greater Manchester. I tried to do a little bit of research and I just couldn't find anything at all. And what I could find was just rumours on social media, really. Some people were saying that it's a former like war ground, that some like conflict took place there hundreds of years ago. After the story went live, I was messaged on Twitter with someone saying that I've only just scratched the surface with this story. Obviously, I was intrigued to find out more. And he said that throughout the 60s and 70s, there was a few murders on the street. And I just couldn't find any evidence to back these claims up. So we just couldn't take it any further, sadly. When I got there, because I visited the street myself, there was a feel to it, I'm not going to lie. And I was warned that I would get that sense when I got there. And I did start immediately knocking on at some of the houses, and I went straight to the house where most of the activity did happen in the 90s. And a young woman answered the door holding a baby, and I had my lanyard on saying I was a reporter with the Manchester Evening News. And as soon as I opened my mouth, she knew what I was talking about, and straight away she was not happy to speak.
It all began in 1993, when one family started experiencing bizarre activity. Their toddler was known to talk to a little man in his room, and an oil-like substance would run down the walls. The incidents reportedly baffled maintenance workers who could not determine the cause of the issues. The family eventually contacted a local church, and an exorcism was carried out at the address. Following the ritual, activity seemed to decrease.
There was one lady who was up for speaking to me who lived in the original haunted house where it all started, but I think she got cold feet and backed out, which was really, I understand. She said it kind of like triggered all the memories from back then and she just didn't want to speak about it. But I did see her comment on the post where I spotted the story, saying that she went into her brother's bedroom and the whole room was full of flying ants everywhere in the room. I couldn't put that in the story because she didn't tell it to me directly, but that was something that I saw her say on Facebook, which was really scary. So I just kind of continued down the street, knocking on at each one, and everybody knew what I was talking about, but nobody wanted to speak. It was quite strange. It was like everybody was being really defensive and they just kind of didn't want to acknowledge that it was all being brought up back again on Facebook and people were talking about it again and they just wanted to leave it in the past. So for me, it kind of showed that this really affected a lot of people, and it just kind of like set in my mind that something really did happen for real, and this wasn't just a made up story, because when you do see things like that on Facebook, you just automatically assume, you know, it's not like legit. And the fact that we hadn't done any stories on it actually. When I went through our archives, there was only one story from the Bolton News in the 1990s. I was really surprised because if the council did get involved, and of course the church, and there was an exorcism carried out, this is quite a big thing to happen in Bolton, which is why I decided to do the story. There's 3 houses that were affected where the activity happened. The Poltergeist, it said that it jumped from one house to another house like a few years later, and it just kind of alternated between these houses.
Just 5 years later, in 1999, a flurry of supernatural activity would begin again. Just 2 doors down from the original haunted house, a family that had just moved in began to experience strange disturbances. Laura was 12 years old when she moved into the property. The now 34-year-old said she knew something was wrong with the home as soon as the family arrived. Speaking to Paige and the Manchester Evening News, she said, "I begged my mum not to move in. I didn't like the feel of it. I didn't feel comfortable. But when we got our stuff in, it faded a bit. When things started happening, my mum would say it was the ghost of my granddad. But I said it wasn't. I just knew there was something there. It felt like I was walking into someone's personal space. I didn't want to walk through the door." Laura remembers the first supernatural occurrence like it was yesterday. She was with her older brother and a friend when the incident happened. The siblings decided to play a prank on their pal who was sleeping in the living room. As they ran back upstairs, her brother let out a blood-curdling scream. He had cut his foot open on a picture frame that was standing on the staircase. It had been hanging on the wall just moments before and had not fallen down. "We had literally just walked on the stairs, and if it fell, it wouldn't stand up," Laura said. "If he stood on it, it would have slipped. It was like a force was holding it in place." That was one of the first scary things that happened.
Her brother's girlfriend slept over one night and she woke up, Laura woke up at around, the early hours of the morning, and the brother's girlfriend was just stood in her room, just staring at her while she was asleep. And she said for some reason she just rolled over and ignored it. She doesn't know why. And the next morning she went downstairs and said to her mum, "Oh mum, the weirdest thing happened last night. I woke up and my brother's," she didn't mention any names, but she just said, "My brother's girlfriend was just staring at me in my room." And the mum went, "Oh, that's weird." Laura went back upstairs, and a few minutes later she heard her mum calling her downstairs saying, "Laura, come in the kitchen now." She went downstairs and her brother's girlfriend was stood in the kitchen chatting to her mum. And her mum went, "Tell her what you've just told me." And Laura was like, "Oh, it was dead weird last night. You were in my room and you were just staring at me." And she went, "No, you were in my room staring at me." And I was honestly, like I said before, my goosebumps were crazy. And Laura said this would have been impossible because her brother also had a lock on his door, so there's just no way she would have got in.
Strange activity wouldn't just occur inside the home. Dozens of dead crows were once found scattered around the front and back garden, including along the alleyway at the side of the property. Laura said the sight traumatized her so badly she blocked it out of her mind. And then there was the baby oil type substance, similar to that found in the original haunted house. Laura remembers it dripping down her bedroom walls, causing her posters to fall down. A foul sulfur smell, likened to rotting eggs, would also fill the property. Laura says some council maintenance workers even refused to visit the address due to its reputation. Laura's nephew was known to sit in the corner of the room, babbling away to himself. When asked who he was talking to, he would say, "The big guy." Laura also recalls the time she heard an entity imitate her brother. She was at home with a friend, waiting for her sibling to return from work. They were ready to watch a new episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, a show her brother didn't want to miss out on. She heard the door open, a set of keys placed on the hook, and footsteps leading into the kitchen. When her brother still hadn't come upstairs, 20 minutes later, she thought he may have been making food. But suddenly, her brother walked through the front door. She asked him if he had just gone back outside. He informed her he had just gotten out of a taxi that she could see driving off.
She said that she could feel a few presences in the house. She said it was never just one. And she said that a few times her dad mentioned seeing a tall man stood at the bottom of the stairs a few times. She would see an older woman. I asked her if it was just one, and she said it was definitely more than that. I think she mentioned that some didn't feel as sinister as the others, but she was definitely scared. She said she was terrified the whole time she lived there. There would be times where she would, well, I think every night, if she needed to go to the bathroom, she would hold it in and be in agony all night because she was just that terrified to get up out of bed. She would face the wall all night just staring at it because she was that scared. Definitely felt an evil presence there. So the first woman in the main house wouldn't speak to me. I knocked on at the second house, no one answered. And just as I was about to go back to my car, I saw her pull up in the drive, like with some shopping, and I was like, oh my God, this is my chance. So I ran back down to her house, fully expecting her to be like, go away. And she was up for speaking to me, and I couldn't believe it because she was so nice and she was going into so much detail. And she said that it doesn't bother her at all. She actually quite likes the history. And she's experienced nothing since she moved in 2006, I think it was. But the craziest thing to me, and I literally got like goosebumps all over my arm when she told me, was that she had to sign that disclaimer from Bolton Council when she purchased the house, which I just thought was the craziest thing. I've literally never ever in my life heard of that happening in the UK, at least. There was a few things on this waiver. It was not to have children under, I can't remember what the age was, but it was young children, not to perform any Ouija boards or dark magic that might conjure up any spirits, and yeah, just to acknowledge what had happened there before. Again, for me, that solidified that something did happen there.
A big thank you to the Manchester Evening News reporter Paige Oldfield for joining us today. You can follow Paige on Twitter at Paige Oldfield 22. And thank you for joining us as well. Be sure to follow us wherever you listen so you don't miss any new episodes. For information about our ghost tours in Kingston, Ottawa, and Toronto, including Ghosts of Fort Henry, please visit our website, hauntedwalk.com. There you can also find information on our virtual experiences, including our virtual haunted campfires and the haunting at home. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter, all at Haunted Walk, for the latest news and updates. As always, my love and undying appreciation for the entire Haunted Talks team, including Michelle Dennis, our outstanding audio editor. Until we meet again, sweet dreams.